There's a moment when you realize the person you sacrificed everything for doesn't recognize your worth. For me, that moment came on a rainy Tuesday evening when my son Marcus looked me in the eyes and told me I was a burden. I'd just returned from my meeting with Howard, my boss of 15 years at the accounting firm. Rain dripped from my coat onto the polished hardwood floors of the home I had paid for. Marcus glanced up from his laptop at the kitchen island, his wife Vanessa chopping vegetables with mechanical precision beside him. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. You're home early, he said, not bothering to hide the suspicion in his voice. I hung my coat carefully on the rack, buying myself a few extra seconds before I had to say the words aloud. Howard called me into his office today. The firm is downsizing. After the merger, I forced a smile. After 15 years, I've been let go. The knife in Vanessa's hand paused mid-chop. Marcus's expression shifted from surprise to something darker, something that made my stomach twist. Let go? He repeated, closing his laptop with a sharp snap. What does that mean exactly? I moved toward the kitchen counter, my legs feeling suddenly unsteady. It means I no longer have a job at Preston and Howard. They're giving me a severance package, of course, but how much? Vanessa interrupted, placing the knife down with deliberate care. 3 months' salary, I replied, noting how her shoulders tensed. It's standard, really, and I've already started looking at other opportunities. At 55, I'm hardly ready for retirement. Marcus stood up and began pacing, running his fingers through his dark hair, the same way his father used to when agitated. 3 months. That's it? After 15 years, they're just tossing you aside with 3 months' pay? For a moment, I thought he was angry on my behalf, concerned about how I'd been treated. That warm thought lasted exactly 2 seconds. Preparing. And narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What about the mortgage payment? He continued. The property taxes? Vanessa's student loans? We had a plan, Mom. You were supposed to keep working until I finished paying off the medical school debt. The air seemed to leave the room all at once. I stared at my son, this grown man I'd raised alone after his father died. The boy I'd worked 3 jobs for so he could attend that expensive private high school. The teenager I'd poured my retirement savings into to ensure he could go to the college of his dreams without crushing debt. I didn't plan to lose my job, Marcus, I said quietly. Vanessa pushed her sleek blonde hair behind her ear. No one plans these things, Diana, but responsible people prepare for them. Her tone was smooth and patient, as if explaining something to a particularly slow child. Do you have any savings at all? Any investments? Anything we can use to weather this storm? The irony of her question nearly made me laugh. If she only knew about the account in my name, the one Howard had helped me set up years ago, the investments that had grown steadily, untouched, but I kept my face carefully neutral. I have some savings, I said. Enough to keep myself afloat, while I look for another position. Marcus stopped pacing. Yourself? What about us? This arrangement has always been that you help with the household expenses. That was the deal when you moved in. When you asked me to move in, I corrected him, gently. After Dad died, you insisted I sell my house and come live with you and Vanessa because, in your words, family should stick together. Vanessa's laugh was like ice cracking. That was before you became a financial liability. We're trying to start a family, Diana. We can't afford to support a 3rd adult. I looked around the spacious kitchen with its marble countertops and high-end appliances. The house I had contributed the entire down payment for as a gift when they got married 5 years ago. The house where my monthly contribution covered most of the mortgage. I understand your concern, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll find another job as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, Marcus pressed, his voice taking on the edge it did when he wasn't getting his way. What exactly is your plan until then? I opened my mouth to answer when my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down at the screen. It was from Howard. The firm's biggest client, Westmore Industries, had specifically requested to keep working with me. Howard was offering me a private consulting position, starting immediately. The pay would be double what I'd been making. My heart raced as I read the message, but I tucked the phone away without replying. Something about Marcus's tone, about Vanessa's calculating gaze, made me pause. For 15 years, I'd been the reliable foundation of this household, the steady stream of income they could always count on. Maybe it was time they learned what life would be like without that security. I have some options, I said vaguely. I'll figure it out. Marcus exchanged a look with Vanessa, a silent communication that excluded me entirely. Then he turned back, his expression now carefully composed into one of sympathetic concern. Mom, you've always been terrible with money. Dad handled everything. When he was alive, and then I helped you manage things after he passed. I don't think you realize how serious this situation is. I felt a flash of indignation. I'd been an accountant for over 30 years. I'd managed multi-million-dollar portfolios. I'd kept meticulous records of every client's financial history. But at home, I'd played a role. The slightly helpless mother who needed guidance with her checkbook, who couldn't quite understand investment strategies. It had made Marcus feel needed, important. It had been a gift to him, this pretense of my financial incompetence. A gift he was now using against me. I appreciate your concern, I said, but I'll be fine. Vanessa leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails spread on the counter. Diana, we've been thinking. My mother mentioned that Golden Sunset Assisted Living has openings for resident aides. The pay isn't great, but they provide room and board. It could be perfect for you while you get back on your feet. I stared at her. You want me to work as an aide in a nursing home? It's a retirement community, she corrected smoothly. And yes, I think it makes perfect sense. You've always been good with older people, and it would solve the housing issue. What? Housing issue? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus cleared his throat. We can't afford to support you, Mom. Not with the baby planning, not with our debt. If you're not contributing financially, you can't stay here. The words hung in the air between us. I thought of all the nights I'd stayed up poring over financial aid forms, loan applications, scholarship essays. All the overtime I'd worked, the vacations I'd skipped, the retirement contributions I'd reduced, all to ensure Marcus could follow his dreams. And now, at the first sign that I might need support in return, they were looking for the most convenient way to remove me from their lives. I see, I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm brewing inside me. And how long do I have before I need to make other arrangements? Vanessa glanced at Marcus. Well, ideally, we've already called Golden Sunset, Marcus interrupted. They have an opening starting next week. The director is a friend of Vanessa's parents. She said she'd expedite your application. Next week. They wanted me gone in a week. I nodded slowly, buying time as I processed this information. That's very efficient of you. We're just trying to be practical, Vanessa said, resuming her vegetable chopping. You always taught Marcus the importance of planning ahead. Indeed, I had. Planning ahead was exactly what had led me to save and invest so carefully over the years. Planning ahead was why I'd never told Marcus about the trust fund his grandfather had left him, which I'd quietly invested and grown. Planning ahead was why Howard and I had spent years developing a consulting business on the side, waiting for the right moment to break away from the firm. Planning ahead was why I had over $3 million in assets that neither of them knew anything about. You're right, I said, forcing a smile. Planning ahead is essential. I appreciate you both looking out for me. Marcus's shoulders relaxed visibly, relief washing over his face. We care about you, Mom. We just need to be realistic about our situation. Of course, I agreed, turning to leave the kitchen. I should probably start packing. Mom, Marcus called after me, his voice softer now. I know this seems harsh, but it's for the best. You'll see. I paused at the doorway, looking back at my son and his wife in their expensive kitchen, planning how quickly they could remove me from their lives. Yes, I said quietly. I believe I will. Over the next few days, I moved through the house like a ghost, packing my belongings with methodical precision. Marcus and Vanessa seemed to take my calm acceptance as a sign of agreement with their plan. They even began to act magnanimous, offering to store a few boxes in their garage, suggesting I could visit for dinner. Whenever you want, Mom, Vanessa's mother Eleanor stopped by on Thursday, ostensibly to drop off some paperwork from Golden Sunset, but really to assess the situation herself. Diana, she said, air-kissing my cheeks in the foyer. I heard about your unfortunate employment situation. Such bad timing with Vanessa and Marcus trying for a baby. I ushered her into the living room, noting how her eyes swept critically over my simple cardigan and slacks. Eleanor had never approved of her daughter marrying a doctor whose mother was just an accountant. The fact that I'd put Marcus through medical school with my just an accountant salary seemed irrelevant to her. Thank you for bringing the paperwork, Eleanor, I said, accepting the folder she thrust toward me, though I'm not entirely sure the position is right for me. Eleanor's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Not right for you? Diana, be reasonable. What other options do you have? I could have told her about the consulting offer from Howard. I could have mentioned the 3 investment properties I owned in the downtown area, the portfolio I'd carefully built over decades, or the substantial inheritance I'd received from my Aunt Lillian 5 years ago. The inheritance I'd never touched, allowing it to grow steadily under Howard's expert management. Instead, I simply smiled. I'm exploring several possibilities. Eleanor laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. At your age, in this economy? Diana, you're being naive. Golden Sunset is offering you shelter and income. You should be grateful. I opened the folder and scanned the contents. The position paid minimum wage, with a small studio apartment as part of the compensation package. The duties included everything from serving meals to cleaning rooms to assisting residents with personal care. It was respectable, honest work, but it was also a stark illustration of what Marcus and his in-laws thought I was worth. I'll certainly give it serious consideration, I said, closing the folder. Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice as if sharing a confidence. Between us, Diana, I think this is for the best. Vanessa has been concerned about your influence on the baby. You know, your relaxed approach to finances. She doesn't want her child picking up bad habits. The casual cruelty of the statement took my breath away. I'd managed my household with careful precision for decades, stretching every dollar to give Marcus the best possible life. The relaxed approach Eleanor referred to was likely the one time I'd bought a designer handbag on sale, my single luxury purchase in 5 years. I see, I managed to say. Eleanor stood, smoothing her expensive silk blouse. The director expects your call tomorrow. Don't disappoint her, Diana. Opportunities like this don't come along every day for women in your situation. After she left, I sat in the silent living room, the Golden Sunset folder on my lap. My phone buzzed with another text from Howard, asking when we could meet to discuss the consulting arrangement. I'd been putting him off, unsure of my next steps. But as I looked around at the home I'd helped create, at the family photos on the wall, Marcus's graduation, his wedding day, moments where I stood smiling proudly at his side, I felt something shift inside me. A lifetime of putting his needs first, of supporting his dreams, of being the foundation he could build upon. And now, At the first sign that I might need support in return, I was being discarded. I texted Howard back, "Let's meet tomorrow. I'm ready to discuss terms." That night at dinner, Marcus asked if I'd had a chance to review the Golden Sunset paperwork. "I have," I replied, serving myself a small portion of the lasagna Vanessa had prepared. "And?" he prompted. "They need an answer by tomorrow." I set down my fork. "I'm not taking the position, Marcus." Vanessa's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. "What do you mean you're not taking it? What's your plan then?" "I've decided to make other arrangements," I said, keeping my tone light and conversational. Marcus frowned. "What other arrangements could you possibly have?" "Mom, be realistic. You have no job, limited savings, and you need somewhere to live. Golden Sunset is perfect." "For you, perhaps," I acknowledged. "It would certainly solve your problem neatly, but it doesn't work for me." "This isn't about what works for you," Vanessa snapped, her facade of patience finally cracking. "This is about facing reality. You can't stay here if you're not contributing, and you have nowhere else to go." I took a sip of water, studying my daughter-in-law's flushed face. "That's not entirely accurate." Marcus made a sound of frustration. "Mom, stop being difficult. We're trying to help you." "Are you?" I asked quietly. "Of course we are," he exclaimed. "We found you a job with housing included. What more could you want?" I set down my glass and looked directly at my son. Respect would be a good start. The word hung in the air between us. Marcus blinked, taken aback. "I've respected you my entire life," he protested. "But you're not being reasonable right now." "Reasonable," I repeated. "Is it reasonable to expect me to scrub floors and empty bedpans at minimum wage because I lost my job after 30 years of steady employment? Is it reasonable to plan my removal from this house before I've even had time to process being laid off? Tell me, Marcus, if I were your father instead of your mother, would this be your solution?" Vanessa interjected, her voice tight. "This isn't about gender. It's about responsibility. You have no retirement savings, no plan, nothing to fall back on. That's on you, Diana, not us." I almost laughed at the irony. I had more in savings and investments than both of them combined, even with Marcus's doctor's salary. But they'd never bothered to ask about my finances, assuming I had nothing because I'd given so much to them. "You're right about one thing," I said finally. "I do need to take responsibility for myself. That's why I've decided to move out at the end of the week." Marcus looked relieved. "So you will take the Golden Sunset position?" "No," I said firmly. "I'll be making my own arrangements." "Like what?" Vanessa demanded. "Where will you go? What will you do for money?" I stood, gathering my plate and utensils. "I appreciate your concern, but you've made it clear that my financial situation is no longer your problem. So I won't burden you with the details." As I walked to the kitchen, I heard Vanessa whisper furiously to Marcus. "See what I mean? This is exactly why she can't be around our child. She's completely irresponsible." Instead of returning to the table, I went upstairs to my room and closed the door. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. The numbers on the screen confirmed what I already knew. I had more than enough resources to rebuild my life, however I chose to do so. For decades, I'd been the safety net for others. I'd caught Marcus every time he fell, cushioned every blow, smoothed every path. And in doing so, I'd raised a son who believed that support should only flow in one direction, toward him. It was time to change that narrative. I opened a new browser, tab, and began searching for apartments in the upscale Riverside district, the same neighborhood where Eleanor and her husband lived in their sprawling colonial. A smile curved my lips as I scrolled through the listings. Perhaps it was time to introduce my family to the woman I truly was, not the convenient fiction they'd created. The woman with the financial acumen to turn a modest inheritance into a small fortune. the woman who'd been offered a prestigious consulting position the same day she'd been let go, the woman who, for the first time in decades, was going to put herself first. I clicked on a stunning 3-bedroom penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a panoramic view of the city. It was easily 3 times the price of the mortgage I was currently helping Marcus pay. Perfect. Time to reintroduce myself, I murmured, filling out the inquiry form. The real Diana Williams is about to make her debut. The Riverside Grand was even more impressive in person than in the online listing. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, illuminating hardwood floors and quartz countertops. The leasing agent, a young woman named Tara, couldn't quite hide her surprise when I immediately offered to pay 6 months' rent in advance. "That's very generous, Ms. Williams," she said, glancing down at her tablet. "But we typically only require first and last months. I prefer to simplify things," I replied with a smile. "And please call me Diana." I signed the lease that afternoon, feeling lighter than I had in years. The penthouse would be available in 3 days. Perfect timing for my departure from Marcus and Vanessa's home. As I left the Riverside Grand, I checked my phone and found 3 missed calls from Howard. It was time to stop avoiding that conversation. I dialed his number as I walked to my car. "Diana." Finally. Howard's familiar voice boomed through the speaker. "I was beginning to think you were ghosting me." "Sorry about that," I said, sliding into the driver's seat. "It's been a complicated week." "How's Marcus taking the news about your job?" I hesitated. Howard had known Marcus since he was a boy, had attended his graduation, had sent an extravagant gift for his wedding. "Not well," I admitted. "In fact, he and Vanessa have suggested I take a position at an assisted living facility. Room and board included." There was a long pause. "Please tell me you're joking." "Afraid not." Howard's explosive response contained several choice words about my son's character and parentage. When he finally calmed down, he said, "Well, that settles it. You're definitely coming to work with me. Have you told them about our plans yet?" "No," I replied, starting the car. "And I'm not going to, at least not right away." Howard made a sound of understanding. "You want to teach them a lesson?" "I want them to see who I really am," I corrected, "not who they've decided I am." "Fair enough," Howard said. "When can you start?" "How's Monday sound?" "Perfect. I'll have the paperwork ready. And Diana? I know this isn't what you planned, but I'm excited to finally be working together as partners." I smiled as I ended the call. Howard and I had been developing this consulting business for years, originally planning to launch it as a retirement venture. Life had accelerated our timeline, but perhaps that was for the best. When I returned to Marcus's house, it was quiet. A note on the kitchen counter informed me they'd gone to dinner with Vanessa's parents. I was almost relieved not to face them immediately. I needed time to finalize my plans. Upstairs in my room, I opened my closet and surveyed its contents. For years, I'd dressed modestly, buying mid-range clothing that was professional but unremarkable. It was part of the image I'd cultivated: the practical mother, the reliable accountant, the woman who put others' needs before her own. Tomorrow, I would go shopping. The new Diana Williams would need a wardrobe befitting her position and income. Spent the evening sorting through my belongings, separating what I would take to my new life from what I would leave behind. It was a surprisingly emotional process. Each item carried memories, connections to the past I was now choosing to redefine. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom, we've decided to extend your deadline. You can stay until the end of the month if you need more time to accept the Golden Sunset position." The magnanimity of their extension would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. They still assumed I had no options, no resources, no agency in my own life. I didn't respond. In the morning, I was drinking coffee when Marcus and Vanessa came downstairs. Vanessa's eyes immediately went to the stacks of boxes in the corner of the living room. "You're packing already?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. "That's proactive." "I've always believed in being prepared," I replied, sipping my coffee. "I'll be out by Saturday." Marcus frowned. "Mom, I texted you last night. We're giving you until the end of the month." "That's very generous, but unnecessary. I've made other arrangements." "What other arrangements?" Vanessa demanded, crossing her arms. "You keep saying that, but you haven't provided any details." I set down my cup. "You're right, I haven't. Just as you didn't provide any details when you decided I needed to leave. You simply informed me of your decision." Marcus's face flushed. "That's different. We were trying to help you." "Were you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or were you solving a problem? Your problem, not mine." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa snapped. "You're being childish. If you have some sort of plan, just tell us what it is." I stood, smoothing my slacks. "I have an appointment this morning, so I should get going. But don't worry, you'll find out about my plans soon enough." As I walked toward the door, Marcus called after me. "Mom, wait! Did you even call Golden Sunset? They're expecting to hear from you." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "I won't be taking that position, Marcus, but thank Eleanor for thinking of me." Before either of them could respond, I was out the door. The personal shopper at Neiman Marcus was professional and discreet, helping me select a wardrobe that reflected my new status without being ostentatious. Tailored suits in subtle, expensive fabrics, cashmere sweaters, designer shoes that were both elegant and comfortable. By the time we finished, I had spent more on clothing in one day than I had in the previous 5 years combined. "Your items will be tailored and ready by Friday," the shopper assured me. "Will you be picking them up, or would you prefer delivery?" "Delivery, please," I said, providing my new address at the Riverside Grand. Saturday morning would be perfect. Next, I visited the furniture showroom Howard had recommended. The interior designer listened attentively as I described my vision for the penthouse: modern but warm, sophisticated but comfortable. We selected key pieces that would be delivered and arranged before my move-in date. By late afternoon, I was exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time in decades, I was making choices based solely on my own preferences, not compromising to accommodate someone else's needs or expectations. My final stop was the bank, where I arranged for a cashier's check to cover the 6 months' rent. The bank manager, who had handled my accounts for years, couldn't quite hide his surprise at the size of the withdrawal. "This is quite a sum, Ms. Williams," he commented. "May I ask what it's for?" "I'm moving to the Riverside Grand," I replied, enjoying the slight widening of his eyes. The Riverside Grand was well known as the most exclusive address in the city. "I see," he said, his entire demeanor shifting subtly. "In that case, perhaps we should discuss our premium client services. With your portfolio, you qualify for several benefits you're not currently utilizing." I smiled. "I'd appreciate that, but it will have to wait for another day. I'm in the middle of a significant life transition." "Of course," he agreed, processing the check. "Whenever you're ready, we're here to serve you." As I drove home, I reflected on how differently people treated me when they glimpsed my financial reality. The bank manager, the personal shopper, the interior designer, all had responded to the evidence of wealth with increased attention and respect. Would Marcus and Vanessa do the same? Or would they be angry that I had resources I'd never disclosed? In truth, I wasn't sure which reaction I hoped for. When I arrived at the house, Eleanor's silver Mercedes was parked in the driveway. Perfect. The gang was all here. I entered to find Marcus, Vanessa, and her parents seated in the living room, all wearing expressions of grave concern. A staged intervention, apparently. "Diana," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with forced sympathy. "We've been waiting for you. Marcus tells us you're being difficult about the golden sunset opportunity? I set down my purse, taking in the tableau before me. Good afternoon, Eleanor. Richard. I wasn't expecting a family meeting. Richard, Vanessa's father, cleared his throat importantly. Diana, we're concerned about your refusal to face reality. The golden sunset position is a perfect solution to your current predicament. My predicament, I repeated, sitting down calmly in the armchair opposite them. And what exactly do you think that is? Mom, Marcus interjected, his tone conciliatory. You've lost your job. You have limited savings. You need both income and housing. Golden Sunset solves both problems. I nodded thoughtfully. So my predicament, as you see it, is financial insecurity. And your solution is for me to accept a minimum wage position cleaning rooms at a retirement home. It's not just cleaning, Vanessa protested. You'd be helping people, and you'd have your own apartment. A studio apartment, I corrected, with a hot plate instead of a kitchen. I looked up the staff accommodations online. Eleanor made an impatient gesture. The point is, it's secure, it's stable, it's appropriate for someone in your position. My position, I echoed, feeling a surge of anger that I carefully controlled. And what position is that exactly? There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Richard spoke, his tone patronizing. Diana, let's be frank. You're a woman in your mid-50s with no specialized skills, limited education, and no substantial savings. Your employment prospects are frankly bleak. Golden Sunset represents security in a situation where you have few options. I let his words hang in the air for a moment, studying each of their faces. They all wore variations of the same expression, a mixture of condescension, impatience, and what they probably thought was concern. I appreciate your candid assessment, I said finally, though I feel compelled to correct a few misconceptions. I turned to Marcus. First, I'm not being difficult about Golden Sunset. I'm declining a position that doesn't align with my career goals or financial needs. Career goals? Vanessa scoffed. Diana, be realistic. I ignored her, continuing steadily. Second, I don't have limited savings. I have substantial financial resources, including investment properties and a diversified portfolio. Marcus blinked, confusion crossing his face. What are you talking about? You've never mentioned any of this before. You never asked, I replied simply. You assumed, and I allowed that assumption to stand. That was my mistake. Eleanor rolled her eyes dramatically. Please, Diana. If you had money, you wouldn't have been living with Marcus, and Vanessa dependent on them for housing. I wasn't dependent on them, I said, my voice hardening slightly. I paid more than my share of household expenses, and I lived here because Marcus asked me to move in after his father died. He didn't want me to be alone, or at least, that's what he said at the time. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mom, where is this coming from? Why are you suddenly claiming to have all these resources that you've never mentioned before? I sighed, feeling suddenly tired of the charade. I'm not claiming anything, Marcus. I'm simply correcting your misperceptions. As for why I never mentioned it, for years, I've been playing a role that you all seemed comfortable with. The dependent mother, the financial novice. It made you feel needed, important. It simplified our relationship. Richard leaned forward, his expression skeptical. So you expect us to believe that you, secretly amassed a fortune while working as an accountant, and never told anyone? Not a fortune, I said mildly, but enough. And yes, that's exactly what happened. I invested carefully, lived below my means, and built financial security for myself. Prove it, Vanessa challenged. If you're so financially stable, prove it. I studied my daughter-in-law's flushed face. Why should I have to prove anything to you, Vanessa? You've made it abundantly clear that my financial situation is no longer your concern. Because you're lying, she insisted. You're making this all up because you're too proud to accept help. The help you're offering is a minimum wage job cleaning toilets, I pointed out. That's not help. It's a convenient solution to a problem, me, that you no longer want to deal with. Eleanor stood up, her patience clearly exhausted. This is absurd. If you had money, you would have mentioned it before now. You wouldn't have let Marcus pay for everything. Marcus hasn't been paying for everything, I corrected. I've contributed significantly to this household. And as for why I didn't mention, my resources. Perhaps I wanted to see who would stand by me when they thought I had nothing to offer. Now I know. A heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus stared at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. "Where will you go?" he asked finally. "I've leased a penthouse at the Riverside Grand," I replied. "I move in on Saturday," Eleanor barked out a laugh. "The Riverside Grand? Do you have any idea what those units cost? You're being ridiculous, Diana." I reached into my purse and removed the lease agreement, along with the cashier's check. I placed them on the coffee table. 6 months' rent paid in advance, I said quietly. I sign the final paperwork tomorrow. Richard picked up the check, his eyes widening as he registered the amount. He passed it to Eleanor, whose face drained of color. This is real," she stammered, looking from the check to me with new eyes. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." Vanessa snatched the check from her mother's hands, staring at it in disbelief. "I don't understand. If you had this kind of money, why did you pretend to need our help? Why did you let us think you were broke?" I supplied. "I never said I was broke, Vanessa. You all assumed that. And I allowed it because it seemed important to Marcus that I need him. Just as his father needed him. Just as everyone in his life has always needed him, in one way or another." I turned to my son, whose face had gone very still. "You've built your identity around being the provider, the protector, the one who solves everyone's problems. I played along because it made you happy. Because after your father died, it seemed like the least I could do." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Mom, that's not what happened. You've always been bad with money. Dad always said so." "Your father said a lot of things," I replied evenly. "Not all of them were true." I stood up, gathering my purse. "I'll be staying at a hotel until Saturday. You can reach me on my cell if needed. I'll come back tomorrow to finish packing my things." As I walked toward the door, Eleanor called after me, her voice sharp with accusation. "You've been lying to them for years. How could you do that to your own son?" I paused, turning back to face them one last time. "I never lied. I simply chose not to correct your assumptions. There's a difference." With that, I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. In the driveway, I paused, drawing a deep breath of the evening air. For the first time in decades, I felt truly free. Not just from financial constraints, but from the weight of others' expectations and the limitations of the role I'd allowed myself to play. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Marcus and his family would have questions, demands for explanation, perhaps even anger at what they would perceive as deception. But for tonight, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life and my identity. As I drove away from the house that had never truly felt like mine, I smiled at the thought of the new home waiting for me, a space that would reflect who I really was, not who others expected me to be. The real Diana Williams was finally stepping into the light. The Somerset Hotel felt like a sanctuary after the tension of the confrontation with Marcus and his in-laws. I checked into a corner suite, overlooking the city park, ordered room service, and spent the evening in blissful silence. No disapproving glances, no thinly veiled criticism, just peace and the luxury of solitude. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from Marcus, alternating between demands for explanation and attempts at reconciliation. I read them all, but responded to none. There would be time for conversations later, when the shock had worn off and we could speak as equals rather than as provider and dependent. In the morning, I met Howard for breakfast in the hotel restaurant to finalize our consulting arrangement. He looked up from his newspaper as I approached, his eyes widening appreciatively at my appearance. I'd worn one of my new purchases, a tailored navy suit with subtle gold accessories, a far cry from my usual practical wardrobe. "Diana Williams," he said with a low whistle. "You clean up nicely." I laughed, sliding into the chair across from him. Amazing what happens when you start dressing for yourself rather than trying to look like someone's sensible mother. Howard studied me with the shrewd gaze that had made him such a successful financial advisor. "You seem different. Lighter, somehow." "I feel different," I admitted. "It's strange how liberating it is to stop pretending to be less than you are." Howard nodded, understanding immediately. "You finally told Marcus the truth." "Part of it," I said, accepting the coffee the waiter poured. "I showed them the lease for the penthouse and the cashier's check for 6 months' rent. They were surprised." Howard snorted. "I bet they were. Did you tell them about our business venture?" "Not yet," I replied. "I thought I'd save something for the housewarming party." Howard's booming laugh drew glances from nearby tables. "I've waited years to see this side of you, Diana. It suits you." We spent the next hour reviewing contracts and discussing our first clients. Westmore Industries had already signed on, along with 2 other major corporations from Howard's portfolio. The projected income for our first year of operations was substantial, more than double what I'd been earning at the firm. "This feels right," I said, signing the final document that made our partnership official. Though I have to admit, I never expected to be launching a new business at 55. Howard raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. "To new beginnings at any age." After breakfast, I returned to Marcus's house to finish packing my belongings. I'd timed my visit carefully, arriving when I knew both Marcus and Vanessa would be at work. To my surprise, I found Marcus sitting at the kitchen table staring into a cup of coffee. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. "You're supposed to be at the hospital," I said, setting down my purse. "I called in," he replied. "We need to talk." I nodded, taking the seat across from him. "Yes, I suppose we do." Marcus studied me for a long moment, taking in my new clothes, my carefully styled hair, the subtle makeup I'd applied that morning. "You look different," he said finally. "I am different," I replied. "Or rather, I'm allowing myself to be who I've always been, instead of who you needed me to be." He flinched slightly at that. "Mom, I don't understand. All these years, you let me think you were struggling financially. You let me worry about your future, your retirement. Why would you do that?" I considered my response carefully. "After your father died, you were so determined to take care of me. It seemed to give you purpose, a sense of control during a time when everything felt chaotic. At first, I just didn't correct your assumptions because it seemed to comfort you. And then, it became a pattern, a dynamic between us that I didn't know how to change." "So you lied to me," he said flatly. "I allowed you to believe what you wanted to believe," I corrected. "There's a difference." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that it made my heart ache. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look? I told my in-laws you were financially dependent on us. I let them believe I was supporting you." Of course, that would be his primary concern, how this reflected on him, not how he had treated me. "I'm sorry if this is embarrassing for you," I said, keeping my voice even. "That wasn't my intention." "Then what was your intention?" he demanded. "What exactly were you trying to accomplish by keeping all this from me and then springing it on everyone like some kind of gotcha moment?" I sighed, feeling suddenly tired. "I didn't plan this, Marcus. I planned to continue our arrangement indefinitely, It was working for both of us. But then I lost my job, and instead of showing concern for me, for the mother who raised you single-handedly after your father died, who put you through medical school, who has supported you in every way possible, your first thought was how quickly you could get rid of me. Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. That's not fair. We were trying to help you. Were you? I asked quietly. By suggesting I take a minimum wage job cleaning toilets at a retirement home? By calling ahead to secure the position before even discussing it with me? By giving me a week to pack up my life and leave the home I've been contributing to financially? For years. Was that really help, Marcus? Or was it a convenient solution to a problem you didn't want to deal with? He was silent, staring down at his hands. The truth is, I continued, I didn't reveal my financial situation before because it never seemed necessary. Our arrangement was working. I was happy to contribute to your household, to help you build your life with Vanessa. But the moment you decided I was a burden rather than an asset, everything changed. Marcus looked up, his expression pained. Mom, we never said you were a burden. You didn't have to say it, I replied. Your actions made it perfectly clear. A heavy silence fell between us. Outside, a lawnmower droned in the distance, a mundane sound that seemed oddly discordant with the emotional weight of our conversation. So, what happens now? Marcus asked finally. You move into your fancy penthouse and we just… What? Pretend none of this happened? I shook my head. I don't know, Marcus. That depends on you as much as me. I'm not cutting you out of my life. I'm just changing the terms of our relationship. I won't be the dependent mother anymore, the one who needs your guidance and protection. I'll be an independent woman with my own life, my own resources, my own priorities. And if I can't accept that, the question hung in the air between us, both challenge and lament. Then I'll be sorry, I said softly. But I won't go back to pretending to be less than I am to make you feel more secure in your role. Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing this. I need some time to process all this. Of course, I agreed, standing up. I'll finish packing and be out of your way. As I turned to leave, Marcus spoke again, his voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. For what it's worth, I am sorry about how we handled things. It wasn't our finest moment. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the armor of self-righteousness, a glimmer of the compassionate boy I'd raised. Thank you for saying that, I said, and went upstairs to finish packing. By Friday afternoon, everything was arranged. My belongings had been moved to the Riverside Grand. My new furniture was being delivered and set up, and I had officially extricated myself from Marcus's home. It had been a whirlwind few days, exhausting, but exhilarating. I spent my last night at the Somerset Hotel, planning to move into the penthouse the following morning. I was just stepping out of the shower when my phone rang, Vanessa's name flashing on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Hello, Vanessa. Diana. Her voice was tense, controlled. I think we need to talk. I wrapped my robe more tightly around me. I agree. But perhaps this would be better in person, once I'm settled in my new place. This can't wait, she said firmly. I need to understand what's happening. One minute you're the helpless mother-in-law we need to find a place for, and the next you're leasing a penthouse that costs more per month than our mortgage. It doesn't make sense. I sat down on the edge of the bed. What exactly is your question, Vanessa? There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. Were you playing us? All these years? Pretending to need our help while secretly sitting on a pile of money? Was it some kind of test? It wasn't a test, I said carefully. I never pretended to need your help. You and Marcus assumed I did, and I allowed that assumption to stand because it seemed important to him to feel like he was taking care of me. That's manipulation, she accused. Perhaps, I acknowledged. Or perhaps it was a mother trying to give her son what he needed emotionally, even at the cost of her own authentic self-expression. Vanessa made a sound of frustration. Do you have any idea how this makes us look to my parents? To our friends? We told everyone you were moving to Golden Sunset because you'd lost your job and had no savings. Again, their concern was about appearances, not about me as a person. I'm sorry if this is uncomfortable for you, I said, not feeling particularly sorry at all. But I didn't create this situation. You and Marcus did, when you decided that my value to your household was purely financial. That's not fair, Vanessa protested. We were concerned about you. We were trying to help. By finding me the cheapest possible living arrangement and job combination so you wouldn't have to feel guilty about kicking me out? I asked. That's not concern, Vanessa. That's convenience disguised as caring. She was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was colder. Marcus says you have some kind of business arrangement with Howard. Is that true? Yes, I confirmed. We're launching a consulting firm. Our first clients are already signed. Another pause. So you're not just financially secure, you're actually wealthy. I chose my words carefully. I have sufficient resources to live comfortably and pursue the career I want, yes. And did Marcus know about any of this? Did you ever tell him the truth? No, I admitted. I didn't. Why not? She demanded. He's your son. He deserved to know. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of years of chosen silence. Because Marcus needed to believe he was taking care of me. It was fundamental to how he saw himself after his father died. I couldn't take that away from him. That's... Vanessa began, then stopped abruptly. When she continued, her voice was quieter. That's actually quite sad, Diana, for both of you. The unexpected insight caught me off guard. Yes, I agreed softly. I suppose it is. There was a long silence on the line. I don't know where we go from here, Vanessa said finally. Marcus he's struggling with all this. He feels betrayed, embarrassed. And my parents are furious. They think you deliberately made fools of us all. I understand, I said. And I'm willing to give everyone time to process this. But I won't apologize for finally choosing to live authentically, even if the timing was forced by circumstances. We're supposed to be a family, Vanessa said, an edge of accusation in her voice. Yes, I agreed. And families support each other through difficult times. They don't look for the most convenient way to discard members who are temporarily vulnerable. The truth of my words hung heavily between us. I should go, Vanessa said finally. I needed to understand. And do you? Understand? She sighed, a sound both frustrated and resigned. I'm not sure. Maybe. A little. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, staring out the hotel window at the city lights. The conversation with Vanessa had been surprisingly thoughtful. Certainly. More nuanced than I'd expected. Perhaps there was hope for a genuine relationship between us after all. Not the forced proximity of living together, but something built on mutual respect and understanding. The next morning, as I prepared to check out of the hotel, the desk clerk handed me an envelope. This was delivered for you early this morning, Ms. Williams. Inside was a card, expensive stationery with a handwritten note. Diana, I hope you'll accept this housewarming gift for your new home. No strings attached, no expectations. Just a small token from someone who is trying to understand. Vanessa beneath. The card was a gift certificate for a local art gallery, one I'd mentioned admiring during a family dinner months ago. It was a surprisingly thoughtful gesture, an olive branch I hadn't expected. As I drove to the Riverside Grand, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in my new beginning, sadness for the years of pretense, hope for a more authentic relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in decades, it was truly mine to navigate. The concierge greeted me warmly as I entered the lobby. Ms. Williams, "Welcome home. Your furniture has been delivered and arranged according to your specifications. The designer left this for you." He handed me a folder containing photos of my completed apartment. "Thank you," I said, accepting it with a smile. "I can't wait to see it." "Also," he added, "Mr. Westmore called. He mentioned something about finalizing contracts on Monday. He asked if you could call him back at your convenience." I nodded, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "I'll do that right away." As the elevator carried me upward to my new home, I reflected on the whirlwind of the past week. In 7 days, I had lost a job, been cast aside by my son, revealed my financial independence, secured luxury housing, and launched a new business. It wasn't how I'd planned to begin this chapter of my life, but perhaps it was exactly how it needed to happen, like ripping off a bandage in one swift, painful motion. The elevator doors opened directly into my penthouse foyer, revealing a space filled with natural light, elegant furnishings, and breathtaking views of the city. It was everything I'd envisioned and more. Not just an apartment, but a statement of who I truly was. I wandered through the rooms, trailing my fingers along smooth countertops and plush fabrics, admiring how perfectly the designer had captured my vision. In the master bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, a vista I'd be waking up to every morning. On the bedside table sat a small silver frame containing a photo I didn't recognize. I picked it up, curious. It was an old picture of me holding Marcus as a baby, both of us laughing at something off camera. I'd forgotten this moment existed, this perfect capture of maternal joy. Where had it come from? A small note was tucked into the corner of the frame. "I found this while cleaning out some old boxes. Thought you might want it for your new place." My sank onto the edge of the bed, the photo cradled in my hands. It was a small gesture, but significant. An acknowledgement of our shared history, a tentative reaching out. Perhaps this was how healing would begin, not with grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations, but with small acts of remembrance, tiny bridges built across the chasm of hurt and misunderstanding. I placed the photo carefully back on the nightstand and walked to the window, gazing out at the city stretching before me. Somewhere out there was my son, wrestling with his new understanding of who his mother truly was. Somewhere was Vanessa, perhaps seeing me as a person in my own right for the first time. And somewhere were Howard and our clients, the beginning of a professional legacy I could be proud of. The road ahead would have its challenges. Relationships would need to be rebuilt, on new foundations of truth and mutual respect. Old patterns would try to reassert themselves. There would be awkward family dinners and tense conversations. But standing in my beautiful new home, surrounded by evidence of my own competence and success, I felt ready for whatever came next. The pretense was over. The mask was off. The real Diana Williams had stepped into the light, and she wasn't going back into the shadows. Not for anyone. My first week in the penthouse passed in a blur of activity. Monday morning, I met Howard at our newly leased office space in the financial district, a corner suite with views nearly as impressive as my apartment. The nameplate on the door read, "Williams and Preston Financial Consulting," my name deliberately placed first. "What do you think?" Howard asked, watching my reaction as I took in the sleek conference room, the ergonomic workstations, the small but elegant reception area. "It's perfect," I said, running my hand along the polished surface of the conference table. "Though I'm still getting used to seeing my name on the door." Howard grinned. "Get used to it. By this time next year, I'm betting it'll be on the building directory too." Our first client meeting was scheduled for that afternoon, the CEO of Westmore Industries and his executive team. I spent the morning reviewing their financial portfolios, familiarizing myself with the specifics of their corporate structure, preparing to demonstrate exactly why they'd been right to request me specifically. At noon, Howard knocked on my office door. "Ready for lunch? There's a great bistro around the corner." I glanced up from my laptop. Rain check? I'd like to finish going through these quarterly reports before the meeting. Howard studied me for a moment. Diana, I've known you for 15 years, and I've never seen you this focused. It's a little intimidating, if I'm being honest. I smiled. I've spent decades holding back, Howard, playing a role, being less than I am. Now I'm finally able to bring my full self to the table. It feels liberating, he suggested. Exactly. After Howard left, I continued working, losing myself in the familiar comfort of numbers and financial projections. It wasn't until my phone buzzed with a text that I realized how much time had passed. It was from Marcus. Mom, can we talk? Dinner. This week, maybe? I stared at the message, conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me wanted to rush to accept, to rebuild the bridge between us as quickly as possible. Another part, the newly empowered Diana, who no longer needed to please everyone, counseled caution. I'm quite busy with the new business this week, I replied. Perhaps next week would be better. His response came quickly. Sure, just let me know. When? Things to discuss. I set the phone down, wondering what those things might be. An apology? Further questions about my finances? Demands for explanation? It could be any or all of these, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that conversation. Just yet. The meeting with Westmore Industries went exceptionally well. The CEO, James Westmore, had specifically requested that I handle his accounts after working with me at the previous firm. Mrs. Williams, he said as we wrapped up, I have to admit I was surprised to hear you'd left Preston and Howard. But now that I see what you're building here, it makes perfect sense. Your insight into our pension fund structure alone has saved us millions over the years. I smiled, accepting the compliment with a confidence I wouldn't have shown just weeks earlier. Thank you, Mr. Westmore. We're looking forward to a long and productive partnership. As the executive team filed out, James lingered behind. Diana, may I speak frankly? Of course, I replied, curious. I've known Howard for 20 years. He's brilliant, but he's not the reason I brought our business here. He gestured toward the departing executives. You are. Your analysis, your foresight, your attention to detail. That's what we need. And I'm not the only CEO who feels that way. I blinked, taken aback by his directness. I appreciate your confidence. It's not confidence, it's recognition of value, he corrected. And speaking of recognition, the annual Financial Excellence Awards dinner is next month. I've nominated your work on our pension restructuring. The committee was quite impressed. I stared at him. The Excellence Awards? But those are typically given to firm partners, executives. People exactly like you, James interrupted with a smile. Partner in a successful consulting firm, innovative financial strategist, woman breaking new ground in a predominantly male field. The invitation should arrive this week. After he left, I sat in the conference room alone, processing his words. The Financial Excellence Awards were prestigious, widely covered by business media. Being nominated was itself an honor. Winning would put our fledgling firm on the map instantly. That evening, as I arrived home to my penthouse, the concierge handed me a thick cream envelope, the formal invitation to the award ceremony. I carried it upstairs, oddly reluctant to open it. This nomination represented everything I'd been hiding for years: my expertise, my financial acumen, my professional success. If I attended, if I won, there would be no more hiding. Everyone, including Marcus and his in-laws, would see exactly who I was and what I was capable of. I was still contemplating this when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting visitors. Through the peephole, I saw Eleanor standing in the hallway, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Bracing myself, I opened the door. Eleanor, this is unexpected. She took in my appearance, the tailored slacks and silk blouse I hadn't changed out of after work, and something shifted in her gaze. "Diana, may I come in? I won't take much of your time." I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course." Eleanor entered, her eyes widening as she took in the penthouse's elegant interior, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the designer furniture. "This is quite impressive," she admitted. "Thank you," I said, not offering further comment. "Would you like some tea? Or perhaps something stronger?" "Tea would be lovely," she replied, following me to the kitchen. She watched silently as I prepared a pot of Earl Grey, arranging cups and saucers on a small tray. "I owe you an apology," she said abruptly, just as I was about to pour. I set the teapot down carefully. "I'm listening." Eleanor sighed, looking uncomfortable. "I made assumptions about you. We all did, and those assumptions were clearly inaccurate." "Yes," I agreed. "They were. Richard and we thought you were taking advantage of Marcus and Vanessa. Living in their home, dependent on their support. We pushed them to address the situation when you lost your job." I poured the tea, watching the amber liquid stream into the delicate cups. "I paid more than my share of the household expenses. Eleanor, I was never dependent on them." "So I've learned," she said, accepting the cup I offered. "Vanessa showed me the household accounts. Your monthly contribution was substantial, more than the mortgage payment." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "What I don't understand," she said, setting her cup down, "is why you allowed us to believe otherwise. Why not simply tell us the truth about your finances?" I considered her question. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" Eleanor had the grace to look embarrassed. "Perhaps not initially, but it certainly would have changed our reaction to your job loss." "Would it?" I asked quietly. "Or would you simply have found other reasons to see me as unsuitable? My background, my education, my profession, none of these have ever measured up to your standards for Vanessa's family." Eleanor flinched. "That's not entirely fair." "Isn't it? You once told Vanessa, at her engagement dinner, that you'd hoped she would marry into a family with connections." I was sitting 3 seats away. "I didn't think you heard that," she murmured. "I hear a great deal that people don't think I do," I replied. "It's a side effect of being underestimated." Eleanor was silent for a long moment, staring into her teacup. "I've been unkind to you," she finally said, "and I'm sorry for that. Truly." The apology was unexpected, and I found myself momentarily at a loss for words. "May I ask you something?" Eleanor continued, not waiting for my response to her apology. "How did you do it? Build all this?" She gestured at the penthouse around us. "On an accountant's salary?" I smiled slightly. "Careful investing, living below my means, understanding market trends. It's what I do professionally, Eleanor." "And now you have your own firm," she said, "with Howard Preston." Richard mentioned he'd heard about it through his banking connections. "Williams and Preston Financial Consulting," I confirmed. "We've only been operational for a week, and we've already signed 3 major clients." Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, a new respect, perhaps, or simply a reevaluation. "Marcus doesn't know how to process all this," she said. "He's always seen himself as your protector, ever since his father died. Now he's realizing that you never needed his protection at all." "I appreciated his concern," I said carefully. "But no, I didn't need protection. What I needed was respect, recognition, that I'm a capable adult with my own life and my own resources." Eleanor nodded slowly. "And now you have that. Though perhaps not in the way you would have chosen." "No," I agreed. "Not in the way I would have chosen." She set her cup down and stood. "I should go. Thank you for the tea and for hearing me out." At the door, she paused. Vanessa mentioned you're launching your business. There's a charity gala next weekend for the Children's Hospital. Many of the city's business leaders attend. If you're interested in networking, I could arrange an invitation. I studied her, trying to discern her motivation. That's very thoughtful, Eleanor. It's the least I can do, she said simply. After everything. After she left, I returned to the living room and picked up the awards ceremony invitation, turning it over in my hands. 2 opportunities to publicly step into my new role, to claim my expertise and success without apology or minimization. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My phone buzzed with a text from Howard. How about a housewarming party this weekend? Let's celebrate the business launch in your new place. Small gathering, just a few key people. I smiled, typing back, perfect. Saturday evening? The guest list took shape quickly. Howard and his wife, James Westmore and his partner, a few other business associates. After a moment's consideration, I added Marcus and Vanessa. It was time to bridge the gap, to begin building a new kind of relationship, one based on truth rather than comfortable fictions. Their response came later that evening. We'd be honored to attend. Thank you for including us. The formal phrasing spoke volumes about the uncertainty they felt, the careful navigation of our new dynamic. But they had accepted, and that was a beginning. Saturday evening arrived with a flurry of last-minute preparations. The catering was set up, the penthouse gleamed, soft music played in the background. I dressed with care, choosing an emerald green cocktail dress that I'd never have worn in my previous life. Too bold, too eye-catching, too assertive of my femininity. Howard and his wife were the first to arrive, followed by the Westmores and several other business associates. The conversation flowed easily, focused primarily on financial markets and business opportunities. I moved through my own home with a confidence that felt both novel and natural, discussing investment strategies and market projections with the city's financial elite. When the doorbell rang again, I knew who it would be. I opened the door to find Marcus and Vanessa standing awkwardly in the hallway, both dressed formally and carrying a gift-wrapped package. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice slightly strained. "You look different." "Beautiful," Vanessa corrected, giving her husband a pointed look. "You look beautiful, Diana." "Thank you," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. "I'm glad you could come." They moved into the penthouse, their expressions a mixture of admiration and discomfort as they took in the sophisticated space and the high-powered guests mingling. Inside. "This is quite a gathering," Marcus commented, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "I didn't realize you had such connections." "A lot has changed in a short time," I replied. "For all of us." Vanessa handed me the package they'd brought. "Just a small housewarming gift, though I'm not sure what you get for someone who clearly has impeccable taste." I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautifully bound photo album. I opened it to find a collection of family photos spanning decades. Marcus as a baby, his school, years, our family vacations, right up to recent holidays. "We thought you might want these for your new place," Vanessa explained, "to make it feel more like home." I touched the pages gently, unexpectedly moved by the gesture. "Thank you, this is perfect." Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, could we talk privately for a moment?" I nodded, leading him to the study off the main living area. Once inside, he seemed at a loss for words, glancing around at the elegant bookshelves, the antique desk, the framed diplomas and certificates on the wall, including my CPA license and master's degree in finance that he'd somehow never noticed in our previous home. "You've created quite a life for yourself," he said finally. "In just a few weeks." "I didn't create it in a few weeks, Marcus," I corrected gently. "I've been building toward this for years." The only difference is that now I'm no longer hiding it. He nodded, absorbing this. I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything, and I owe you an apology. A significant one. I waited, letting him find his words. When you lost your job, my first thought wasn't concern for you. It was concern for how it would impact me, my plans, my financial situation. He shook his head. That's not the man you raised me to be. No, I agreed softly. It's not. I want to understand how we got here, he continued. How I became someone who could treat his own mother that way. And I'm trying to figure out where we go from here. I moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. I don't have easy answers, Marcus. I played a role in creating this dynamic between us. For years, I let you believe I needed your guidance, your protection. It became a comfortable fiction for both of us. But why? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Why would you pretend to be less capable than you are? I turned back to face him. Because after your father died, taking care of me seemed to give you purpose. It made you feel strong when everything else in your life felt uncertain. And perhaps I was afraid that if you knew I didn't need taking care of, you wouldn't need me at all. Marcus shook his head emphatically. That's not true. You're my mother. Yes, I agreed. But our relationship has always been defined by what I could give you: emotional support, financial assistance, practical help. Never by who I am as a person in my own right. He was silent for a long moment, processing this. So, where does that leave us now? With you in this new life, this successful career, he gestured around the study. This unfamiliar version of my mother? I smiled gently. Not unfamiliar, Marcus, just unrecognized. This has always been who I am. You just never saw it before. And now? Now we have a chance to build something new, I said. A relationship between equals. Between two adults who respect each other's capabilities and independence. It won't be the same as before. It can't be, but it might be better. More honest. More real. Marcus nodded slowly. I'd like that, he said, his voice quiet but sincere. I really would. As we rejoined the party, I caught sight of Vanessa deep in conversation with James Westmore's partner, their heads bent together over what appeared to be a discussion of art, Vanessa's secret passion that she rarely indulged because Eleanor considered it impractical. The room was filled with laughter and conversation, business cards being exchanged, connections being made. Howard caught my eye from across the room and raised his glass in a silent toast. I smiled back, feeling a profound sense of rightness. This was my world now, not hidden away, not minimized, not apologized for. My success, my expertise, my choices, all on full display for the first time, including to my son, who was seeing me clearly at last. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Marcus and Vanessa lingered, helping to gather empty glasses, and straighten the living room despite my protest that the catering staff would handle it. This was enlightening, Vanessa said, adjusting a couch cushion. I've never seen this side of you before, Diana. The way you talked about market projections with Mr. Westmore, you were completely in your element. I agreed. I've always been passionate about financial strategy. It just wasn't something I discussed at family dinners. Well, that should change, she said decisively. I'd like to hear more about your work, your real work, not the sanitized version you thought we wanted to hear. I studied my daughter-in-law with new appreciation. Perhaps there was more depth to her than I'd given her credit for. As they prepared to leave, Marcus hesitated at the door. Mom, about the house. Our house, I mean. I've been thinking about it, and I want to make things right. The down payment you provided, the monthly contributions, it wasn't fair that your name isn't on the deed. I shook my head. That's not necessary, Marcus. I didn't help you buy that house expecting anything in return. I know, he said. That's what makes it worse. You've always given without keeping score. I want to be more like that. More like the person you raised me to be. After they left, I wandered through my quiet penthouse, replaying the evening in my mind. It had been a success on multiple levels, professionally, personally, and perhaps most importantly, as a first step toward healing the breach with my son and daughter-in-law. The path ahead would still have its challenges. Old patterns don't disappear overnight. New understandings take time to solidify. But for the first time, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Not just my career and financial security, but the possibility of an authentic relationship with my family. I prepared for bed. My phone buzzed with a final text from Marcus. Thank you for tonight. For showing us who you really are. I'm sorry it took losing you to make me see you clearly. Love you, Mom. I smiled, typing back. You haven't lost me. We're just finding each other in a new way. Love you too. And for the first time in years, those words felt completely true. Not shadowed by compromise or hidden resentment, but bright with the promise of something better, something real, something built on truth at last. 3 weeks after the housewarming party, Williams & Preston Financial Consulting had expanded to include 2 junior analysts and an executive assistant. Our client list had grown beyond our initial projections, largely due to James Westmore's enthusiastic recommendations within his extensive business network. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant, Mia, knocked on my office door. Ms. Williams, the event coordinator for the Financial Excellence Awards, is online too. She needs to confirm some details for your introduction. I nodded, picking up the phone. The awards ceremony was just 10 days away, and the reality of being nominated was still sinking in. The coordinator's voice was brisk and efficient. Mrs. Williams, we're finalizing the program and need a brief professional bio. The one we have from your nomination seems a bit outdated. I smiled to myself. Yes, I imagine it is. I've made some career changes recently. So we've heard. Congratulations on your new venture with Mr. Preston. If you could email an updated bio by the end of the day, that would be perfect. Oh, and we need to know how many guests will be attending with you. You're entitled to a table of 8. After we hung up, I stared at the phone, considering my options. Howard and his wife would attend, of course, but who else? The old Diana would have kept this achievement quiet, minimized its significance, perhaps even declined to attend altogether. But I was no longer that woman. I picked up the phone again and dialed Marcus's number. It went to voicemail. He was likely in surgery. Marcus, it's Mom. I've been nominated for a Financial Excellence Award. The ceremony is next Friday evening. I'd like you and Vanessa to attend if you're available. Let me know. Next, I called Eleanor. Our relationship was still tentative, rebuilding slowly after years of mutual misunderstanding. But her gesture with the charity gala invitation had been a significant olive branch. Diana, she answered, surprise evident in her voice. This is unexpected. I'm calling with an invitation, I said. I've been nominated for a Financial Excellence Award for my work with Westmore Industries. The ceremony is next Friday. I thought you and Richard might like to attend. There was a momentary silence. The Excellence Awards? Diana, that's quite prestigious. Richard has attended several times through his banking connections. Are you sure you want us there? I am, I confirmed. Whatever our past differences, we're still family, and this is an important moment for me professionally. Then we'd be honored, Eleanor said, her tone genuinely warm. Thank you for including us. As I hung up, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few short months, from being dismissed as a financial burden to being recognized for professional excellence, from hiding my capabilities to showcasing them proudly. The transformation wasn't just external. I felt different inside, more authentic, more aligned with my true self. Howard appeared in my doorway, interrupting my thoughts. The Chandler group just called. They want to move up our meeting to tomorrow. Something about restructuring their pension fund before the quarter ends. I nodded, making a note on my calendar. I'll review their portfolio tonight. Howard studied me with a thoughtful expression. You know, when we planned this business years ago, I always imagined I'd be the front man, the one bringing in clients. But you've really stepped into that role. Does that bother you? I asked. He shook his head, smiling. Not at all. It's impressive, Diana. You've blossomed into this confident, assertive professional. It suits you. Later that evening, as I worked in my penthouse home office, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Mom, I got your message, he said. Of course, Will. Be there. I had no idea you were involved in work at that level. There's a lot about my professional life you didn't know, I said, keeping my tone light. It's not something I talked about much. Why not? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I considered the question carefully. I think I separated those parts of myself, the professional and the personal. At work, I was the expert, the advisor. At home, I was just Mom. It seemed simpler that way. Well, Vanessa and I are really proud of you, he said. And I've been meaning to call anyway. We have some news. My heart quickened. Oh? Vanessa is pregnant. 12 weeks. We had the genetic testing done, and everything looks perfect. It's a girl. For a moment, I couldn't speak, overcome with emotion. Marcus, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both. We want you involved, Mom. Not just as a grandmother who visits occasionally, but really involved. If that's something you'd want. Of course it is, I said, blinking back unexpected tears. Nothing would make me happier. Good, he said, relief evident in his voice. Because we're going to need your help. Not financially, he added quickly. But with everything else. Vanessa and I don't know the first thing about babies. I laughed softly. No one does until they have one. But I'll be there, however you need me. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office, absorbing the news. A granddaughter, a new life, a new generation. And this time, I would be fully myself from the beginning, not just the supportive mother and grandmother, but also the successful professional, the independent woman, the complete person. The following week passed in a whirlwind of client meetings, preparation for the awards ceremony, and a lunch with Vanessa to discuss her pregnancy. She seemed different, more open, less concerned with appearances. When I commented on the change, she smiled ruefully. Having your mother-in-law go from supposedly destitute to highly successful in the span of a week tends to shake up your priorities, she admitted. It made me question a lot of the values my parents instilled in me, about what really matters, what success really means. And what did you conclude? I asked, curious. She considered the question seriously. That authenticity matters more than appearances. That relationships should be based on mutual respect, not power dynamics. That I want my daughter to see me as a whole person, not just as her mother. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Those are valuable lessons, ones I had to learn the hard way. I'm sorry we were part of that hard way, she said quietly. That Marcus and I treated you like you were nothing more than a financial consideration. We all contributed to that dynamic, I replied. But what matters is that we're changing it now. The night of the Financial Excellence Awards arrived with a flurry of activity. I had my hair and makeup done professionally, another first, and dressed in a midnight blue gown that the stylist had assured me was perfect for the occasion. As I studied my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the elegant hairstyle or the sophisticated makeup, but because of the confidence in my gaze, the straightness of my posture, the unapologetic presence I now embodied. Howard and his wife picked me up, both effusive in their compliments. "The competition doesn't stand a chance," Howard declared as we drove to the venue. "Your work on the Westmore pension restructuring was revolutionary." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," I cautioned, though secretly pleased by his confidence. "Being nominated is honor enough." The hotel ballroom was transformed for the evening, with elegant table settings, dramatic lighting, and a small stage at the front. As we entered, I spotted Marcus and Vanessa at our assigned table, along with Eleanor and Richard. The final 2 seats would be filled by James Westmore and his partner. "Mom," Marcus said, standing as we approached, "you look incredible." Eleanor nodded in agreement, her expression genuinely admiring. "Truly stunning, Diana. That color is perfect on you." We settled in, making introductions where necessary. I noticed Richard engaging Howard in conversation, professional interest evident in his expression. Eleanor and Vanessa spoke quietly together, while Marcus asked James thoughtful questions about his business. It was surreal seeing my personal and professional worlds merge so seamlessly. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, "please take your seats. The 15th Annual Financial Excellence Award ceremony is about to begin." The first few awards were presented for categories like Innovation in Banking and Outstanding Risk Management. Each recipient gave a brief acceptance speech, focusing mainly on thanking colleagues and mentors. I tried to focus on their words, but my nerves were mounting as my category, Excellence in Pension Fund Restructuring, approached. "And now," the MC continued, "our next category celebrates innovative approaches to managing pension funds that enhance long-term security while optimizing current returns. The nominees are—" He read off 4 names, including mine, while brief description